I think the first line of the committee's report captures the main issues we're discussing this evening. It says it's a challenging time in the forestry sector. Indeed, the committee has repeatedly heard that it is a time of crisis. The forestry sector is expected to respond constructively to the current backlog in forestry licences. Ireland has a native forestry industry, and this backlog has effectively curtailed domestic activity, leading to a reliance on imports, which is just unbelievable. Although the report was published back in March, the situation remains largely unchanged. Similar to many other deputies, I'm regularly contacted by local forestry businesses, by landowners and communities who are all deeply frustrated at the backlogs in our licensing system. Not only is this affecting the economic side of forestry, but it's preventing communities, like for example Coillte in my area, from planting trees. And they want trees in public spaces on publicly owned land for people to enjoy, and it seems like they're looking at potentially a 2-year wait to get a licence to do that. While the new system brought in by the government last year is processing more licences, it still seems to be very insufficient. And like that, if that community in Coillte are looking at 2 years, the figures that you gave, Minister, are confusing. Like, is that in relation to just felling, or is that planting as well? Or when you say it's down to 11 months, I'd just like to know specifically if applications like that are looking at a reduction as a result. I had amendments to the forestry bill at the time which would have allowed for a more efficient system that balanced commercial and environmental dimensions. I specifically included amendments that guaranteed the timely processing of licences and appeals, and this was rejected by the Minister at the time. The report from the Government Majority Committee recommends that an agreed timeframe should be introduced into licensing application and appeals process to provide certainty to applicants, which is the very thing that the Minister refused last year. And I know it's just kind of common practice to reject every amendment coming from the opposition, but it just kind of baffles me that we waited till now until doing that when we could have just done it then. The same fundamental problem exists now as it did before the forestry bill. Licences appealed are not being decided upon in a timely enough manner. Until it's addressed, this disastrous situation will continue. I particularly welcome the committee's call on the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine to deliver a specific strategy to increase the proportion of broadleaf afforestation. Planting the right types of trees is just as important as drastically increasing afforestation. Native broadleaf species are consistently considerably better for our environment and are part of our natural heritage. Only a few centuries ago, most of Ireland was covered in native woodlands with incredibly rich ecosystems. It is possible to recreate areas of natural forest across the country, and this type of approach is obviously essential to help the climate and biodiversity crisis. Our focus should be on preserving and expanding our natural biome of primary deciduous forests. There must be rewilding strategies and incentives to convert portions of land to native forest. Planting along watercourses is a natural flood prevention measure, while forestry on every farm would help generate a connected wildlife corridor throughout the country, and I hope the committee will give some focus to that. Unfortunately, I couldn't get on the committee despite my best efforts. Connected to this point is the report's recommendation for greater supports to encourage farmers to enter and remain within a forestry programme. Almost 20,000 or 15% of farmers have diversified into forestry, resulting in 270,000 hectares of grant-aided forest land. However, this can and should be much greater. Speaking at the committee, the IFA and other representatives highlighted the need for more incentives to help farmers move to this model. The McKinnon review mentions delays, uncertainties and perceptions of excessive bureaucracy as disincentives to farmers. And, you know, just speaking from experience, we actually planted half the farm in native forestry when around the time small dairy farms became unviable after Simon Coveney lifted the milk quotas. And I even remember during the election somebody saying to me, I'm not voting for you because you ruined that farm with trees. So we still know there's a cultural resistance to forestry in this country. And I think there was a resistance in my family too. We'd always had livestock all over the farm and it was a difficult transition. But I have to say, it is genuinely all of our favourite part of the farm now. And I think that we need, you know, a realisation of that, a more broad one. We need a clear strategy to address these concerns and put all of the programmes in place that encourage planting of native broadleaf trees and provide income to family farms. Important to note, I think, the importance of the knowledge transfer programme for forestry as well and its continuation. The report also identifies the recreational import of forestry as natural spaces for families and communities to be active and have improved contact with the environment. Last year, Coillte announced that 9 Dublin forests would transition away from commercial activities of felling and replanting cycles towards planting native broadleaf varieties. At the time, I wrote to the Minister, the Senior Minister, and met with Coillte to push for a national rollout of this approach. West Cork already has amazing recreational forests, from Glengarriff Nature Reserve to Drumqueen by Inishannon, but the use of sites which are commercial only right now would increase our natural and tourism resources. I'm again calling on the Minister to work towards ensuring this model is applied throughout the country, not just in Dublin. Related to this are local concerns around the sale of forestry land. For example, currently a substantial section of a forest near Riverstick in Cork is for sale on the instructions of Coillte, and the local community are rightly concerned that they'll lose that lovely natural amenity. I'm pursuing the matter with Coillte, but the Minister also needs to review the practice around the selling of forestry land, and the time should be greatly increasing for our afforestation. Finally, one of the most concerning findings of the Mackinac document was a consistent theme emerging during the review was a lack of political commitment and priority from the Irish government to woodland creation. Only a fraction of our afforestation targets this year have been met. While the Mackinac review referred to previous governments, it also seems to be true of this government, and I just hope that will change. And sorry, I'll pass over to Dr. Fitzmaurice.